All right, all right, all right. It is Wednesday. You already know what time it is. Always so excited for this hour that we spend with you. This is episode number 99. Hit the horn for that. Tipping points and puzzle pieces, intentional evolution. Let me bring up my partner in crime, the PIC, the man himself. He might look like Santa with the shaved beard, but it is not December. Come on, let's go, 2024. Mark Boatwright Frost, everybody.
Okay. First of all, I want to ask if you can hear me or something, because it just asked me to reload the page.
Yep, I can hear you.
All right. And it's got this weird, just as you were coming on, it says this, you have an error. You must reload your page. I'm like,
yeah, you're freezing a bit. It's probably the weather out here.
Yeah, it's cold and the lines are cold and the internet is cold and nobody's out checking anything. So yeah, it's going to be weird.
Yeah, well, and you and I haven't talked, but Friday, the downtown library was officially renamed or renamed the ML King event. That was from 6 to 8.
Yeah, I watched some of it.
I left my house at 5:15. When I got back, my pipes were frozen. I didn't get hot water again until Sunday late afternoon.
Wow, at least it didn't burst.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm thankful. But, during the ice storms last year, no problems. This year, 3 hours, pipes frozen.
Okay, so let me tell you a story about Kitsap Transit and the ferry docks.
Please.
None of the bathrooms were working yesterday because the pipes were all frozen. So not to denigrate the great Kitsap Transit people or the ferry dock people, but who the hell builds a building in Washington State and does not insulate the pipes? A public building.
I have no words. I know it's on the water. It's especially cold. I know there were a lot of falls. I actually met a few people that fell, bicycle riders. It's dangerous. Please be careful.
Take your time. Be careful. Try and make sure that you wrap your pipes, and just be aware that it's a challenge. If somebody needs to use your bathroom because their pipes froze, let them in to use your bathroom. You don't want to be that person.
Depends on what you got to do, man.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I watch Bo, and he said about waitresses in restaurants, saying it's freezing out here. There are people who are going to be dying out here. So if somebody's lounging over a cup of coffee, just trying to keep warm, don't be the person that sends them back out of the cold. Be human. Embrace your humanity. Nothing's, you probably at that point don't have a line out the door. Just let people be and let them get warm.
Speaking of humanity, if I may, let me just give a shout out to all the volunteers that have opened up the severe weather shelters. If you don't know, that is volunteer based, right? They're not paid to open up the severe weather shelters. So for the last 4 days or so, 4 locations have been open by the power of volunteerism. So just shout out to them.
Absolutely. Applaud the people who are doing the work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and he lets me have the clap alone.
There you go. And to that end, the severe weather shelters are open this evening. Let me just tell people which ones are open here. The alert just came in. Sorry here, but I don't know if you can see my phone. Not really.
It looks white.
It's my phone is nonstop. It really is. Let me see where this was. They're all open except for one. What I'll do is we'll keep the show going. I'll pull it up on the screen while we're talking.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. I want to do something my computer's not letting me do. Never mind. I was going to pull up the most recent weather, but Microsoft Weather has not been very accurate lately. I'm actually looking for other weather channels. It's been convenient, but not accurate. I like accurate. To that end, we're talking about intentional evolution today.
That's interesting. How would you know if it's accurate? What do you have to balance that against?
Well,
Honestly.
I got my butt handed to me by somebody. We talked about it briefly last week when I posted on the page that it was fairly accurate for the day, but it was presenting 80 to 90, 70 to 80-degree temperatures to mid 80s at the end of the month. I'm pretty certain that was not going to happen. But ironically, I put it out and somebody didn't take it ironically. So there we are. Um, as I'm looking at things and I'm looking down at the bottom here and it says, oh, we're going to beware that there's a warning you could have 3 inches of snow.
Oh, that's old from last year. Let me edit that.
No, I mean it's on my weather today.
Oh, okay.
It's my weather alert today.
I'm like, I didn't read that.
Yeah, no. I check my weather a couple 3 times a day because of activities I don't want to really drive if I can avoid it in really nasty weather. So I'm kind of cautious about that.
No, I understand. Port Orchard, Silverdale, and Kingston are open this evening.
Okay.
FYI.
All right, and the Salvation Army is, I'm assuming, going to be open as well.
Yep, always open.
Okay, excellent. Um, be kind, people. Be kind. There are people literally dying out there. You don't hear about it because we have a newspaper that doesn't actually report anything. But people are dying out there. Be kind. Okay? That's all we can say is be human, be kind.
Yeah.
So, that said, let's talk about becoming more human all the time. So, I actually was watching something earlier today that got me thinking about the intentional evolution and some of the pieces around it and some of the processes about it. So, when people hear the word evolution, all kinds of reactions and feelings and half known thoughts and memes and ways you're influenced come to mind. And it could be a good thing, a bad thing. It could be, depending on who you listen to, what group, what area you're in, it could mean a whole lot of different things. Um, when we're talking about evolution, I want you to know that we're not talking about um, changing your belief systems. What we're talking about is a process that has been pretty proven by science to exist, though is completely misunderstood and used in ways that it shouldn't be used. But we're talking about the very basic sense of evolution where we evolve into different beings. The planet evolves, we evolve, everything in the universe evolves as times change and pressures are applied. In this case, the evolution we're talking about is an evolution we decide to take together to change where we are from where we are today to where we need to be. And when I say need to be, I mean need to be. The pressures that are applying to us now could create our extinction or an extinction level event if we do not change our behavior. And that's on a global scale, but the global scale will take care of itself if we can start changing on a local scale.
Mm-hmm.
If we can start talking to each other and stop othering each other and stop kicking down on each other and stop putting each other in so many labels and so many silos and so many different categories so we can keep ourselves separate. We're all human. Let's start there. We are all human beings. There's a lot of variety within that, but we are all human beings. We have that in common. And if we can start there and start moving through some of the ways we other each other, we silo each other, we label each other, it can only get better. We can only get to a place where we can start making significant changes in the way things are done. And locally, it's vital that we make those changes, especially on the Peninsula. I'm in the process of rewriting the webpage. It'll be launched this week. And one of the things I was working through is discussing um, why Kitsap Peninsula is the perfect place to do a resilient communities project, and why the
Mm,
Kitsap Resiliency Project was born here was because we have challenges a lot of other places don't have.
okay.
So, first of all, let's talk about geographic challenges. We're a peninsula.
Speaking my
You've
language. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so if you go south of here, trying to get out of the Kitsap Peninsula without doing bridges or ferries, you drive through Gorst, you drive south through Tahuya or down the Three or toward Olympia, and look around you. Look at the condition of the roads, look at the breadth of the roads, look at all the things around you, and think about that in times of crisis or disaster. Those roads are not going to be very passable. There are places where they will turn into swamp, Gorse being one of those, in times of a major quake. So we are truly almost an island. That's one level of complication. If disaster comes and we are cut off, we have 3 days worth of food. I'm not trying to scare the hell out of anybody. I'm just saying it as it is. We can change that together.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, today, this minute, that's what exists. Being able to get on and off the peninsula, same situation. We can't go get food because we won't be able to get on and off. We are ferry, bridge, and narrow confining roads through a narrow passage where there's going to be a lot of liquefaction, just say swamps happen. Um, so that's one challenge. It's a geographic challenge. If anything happens, we are going to be struggling. Okay, so second level, physical infrastructure challenge. Washington State just started adopting earthquake codes fairly recently. A lot of the buildings here have not been built to earthquake standards, which California has been doing for decades because California experiences a lot more quakes. That doesn't mean we won't because we are in the circle of fire. We have volcanoes all around us. We have plates that are known to slip. We have all kinds of situations. Probably won't happen tonight, won't happen tomorrow. Again, I'm not trying to scare the hell out of you, but it adds another level of difficulty. And our power comes through us through Gorst. And let's be honest here, the power companies generate somewhere else and ship to other places. That chain is very long and in lots of places tenuous. And so we have to think about that. So we have food, we have power, we have geographical locations, we have a very diverse population with very different cultural models throughout the peninsula. And I think anybody who's spent any time on Bainbridge Island or up in Kingston or Hansville will know they don't think a lot like the people in Bremerton or Port Orchard or Olalla.
Mm-hmm.
And while they think probably more like Gig Harbor, there's still a long cultural difference. So we have a lot of cultural difference here, a lot of cultural diversity and ways of thinking. And I'm not saying good or bad; they're just different, and there are challenges about people having those conversations together.
Right.
So then we have the commuter issue and the military issue. We have people who are here specifically in Bremerton and Port Orchard and um, Gorst and Belfair who are very transient because of the military. They come and go in groups of 5 to 10,000 people, changing all the time. So it's hard to get a community together with people who are transferring all the time, who are changing all the time, who don't have any real buy-in to where you're at. And then you have the people who are commuting to Tacoma and Seattle to work because there isn't really any job opportunities here. So when you think of all these things together, you realize that Kitsap Peninsula is a tremendous challenge to try and build community resilience. And if we can do it here, we can create a model where it will work anywhere. Now try writing that into a paragraph because it's all anyone ever reads. It becomes very challenging.
Yeah, I don't think you can.
So, well, I'm working on it, and I'm not getting there yet. But so there's a challenge here, a specific challenge here. But if we can make it work here and record how we did it, we can turn that over to anywhere and grow resilient communities.
Listening to you speak, one thing I think would be a great idea would just be to go through the emergency management, uh, the county plan
Mm-hmm.
one, and then two, to go through the plans that we have set up. Like, where's our rally point? How are we going to check in? Do we have, our emergency supplies? Who are we going to check on who's not in our immediate circle, right? In our household or close to us? Maybe you have like grandma's in Silverdale. Do I have a way to get a hold of grandma? Do I have a way to get a hold of grandma if the phones go down, right? Are we thinking about those things?
Well, I have read the plan, and I invite anybody and everybody to please read the plan for the county and everybody's buying into pretty much the county plan. Um, and a lot of those things have not been thought through, and a lot of those things are not in place because the reality of something like Cascadia Rising is too large for most of the people in our bureaucratic circles to actually wrap their heads around.
So my concern is Katrina and Flint and other places where there is needless death and suffering, uh, if not for being prepared, right? Having the conversation, making sure that people have a plan, making sure there's some emergency stock. I'd love to see maybe Snap do something where they say, hey, here's a supplemental that goes toward these foods that will allow you to put them away and preserve,
Well,
right?
I strongly suggest that people come to see Stone Soup because we will be talking about that there. And
Nice.
and I will tell you flat out that it isn't going to happen until people come together and demand it happen.
Mm.
And for the same reason they give for everything else, there's no resources to do it.
Well, there's that,
And
but then people have to know that it's something that they need to advocate for, right? Like I
right,
said, we're constantly in survival mode, and it's like, man, I'm trying to go to work. I'm trying to make sure I got transportation to get where I'm going. I'm trying to take care of these babies. Whatever the case may be, and then you're telling me I need to think about the emergency of,
which is not going to happen right now, but my baby is going to have their diapers changed right now.
Right. And it could be, the one thing that I would only push back on you where you say, hey, the earthquake might not be tomorrow, might not be next week. Those things are
But it
true.
also might be.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
we go off of that comfort of saying, you know what? Yeah, you're right. It's probably not going to be tomorrow. 95% not going to be tomorrow, maybe even 98. So I've got time. And then it goes to 2021 and 22 and 23. And now here we are in
Well,
24.
let me just say this one reality, the one absolute certainty is
Sure.
once it happens, you have no more time.
Yeah. And I just told someone, oh, I don't know who it was, that you had mentioned there were only 3 days of food on the peninsula. And they were shocked at that fact. Like, there's
Yeah.
only 3 days? Like,
So
yeah.
let's talk about the world and just in time.
Hmm.
About the mid 90s, somebody had a brilliant idea that it would be better and more profitable to ship things just in time, which means you don't have huge stocks or warehouses full of food. You have enough food to service the people just in time.
Hmm.
And that assumes that the supply chain is always open and there's no problem in the supply chain. Now, pharmaceuticals are that and then some. There aren't any pharmaceuticals storage on the peninsula, to my understanding. So, people who need diabetes medicine, people who need heart medicine, if there's a disaster, it just isn't going to exist very quickly. Isn't going to exist. And first of all, it has a very short shelf life. Second of all, pharmacies legally, I don't believe, are allowed to store a whole lot on site. So that's going to be a really huge issue. Um, but we're not really talking about the well, we are talking about, but we this is not really about all of those things. We're happy to have that conversation. We're happy to talk to you about how that can be changed very quickly to be much more robust, have greater capacity, and the ability to support a greater amount of the community. But the reason I'm saying that Kitsap Peninsula is the perfect place to develop this is because it's hard here for
Hmm.
all of the reasons that I mentioned. And there's a lot of reasons to get together, but Marwan is right. We do day-to-day survival and we don't think about the future. And we need to start having conversations about that because, as he also mentioned, Flint, Michigan, that could have been prevented if people had been maintaining the infrastructure. Now, again, I invite you to Stone Soup. We will have several people with tables that will talk in depth about what happened, what can happen, what technologies are available today that we are not adopting, that we should be adopting, and ways and philosophies we should be looking at things. That's really the time to have this conversation. Or on Sunday mornings, I'm happy to have it at Cups Cafe. But we need to come together to solve any of this. The bottom line is we need to figure out how to bring people together from a diverse background and get them to understand that we are all human and all need to work together. And that, believe it or not, I'm just getting an echo on myself. Believe it or not, that is intentional evolution. We are intentionally changing the way we are acting and behaving because it does not suit us in the ability for humanity to survive together and grow together and to thrive together. So we need to change our model in our head. Now, this is going to seem like a silly example, but I wanted to share this because it kind of hit me in the face this morning. I am a very big fan of Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy, for those of you who know, a Mexican comedian. And he just did a stadium show in 2022, and a lot of interesting things about the stadium show that I highly recommend you watch it. It is on Netflix. One of the interesting things about the stadium show is it was just post COVID, and a lot of his routine and talking about was about COVID and how we lost a lot in COVID. But one of the things he talked about is cancel culture, and a large portion of this is about cancel culture. One of the things he said is, if I'm talking about cancel culture, because I don't talk about politics, I don't talk about religion, I don't talk about sports. If I'm talking about cancel culture, it has gone too far. And he touches on the reality of it. He touches on the need for something like that, but he also touches on the ridiculousness of it. One of the things he says is cancel culture does not educate, it blames. And education is sometimes needed. They were very angry at him for uplifting Chick-fil-A because he went there because Popeyes was closed, and he mentioned on Twitter, and and suddenly everybody went wild because, as many of you know, Chick-fil-A has done some things that are anti-LGBTQ plus community, and they have their business has become they use their business to support anti-LGBTQ legislation and movements. And they said, well, now that you know this, as Fluffy came back saying, I am a friend of the LGBTQ, I am a supporter of the LGBTQ, and says, well, then you're not going to uplift them. And he said, and this is the part that got me thinking, kind of hit me between the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Said, no, I'm going to continue to organically uplift them because I want free shit. And that just made me go, what? The F, man, what are you talking about? And he says, you have to understand, and this, bear with me a few more minutes. I know that a lot of you just went, yeah, this is stupid, I'm not going to listen. But bear with me a few more minutes, because my thinking to this and his reply to this were both, in link to a lot of what we're talking about here and how you change your thinking.
I'm listening.
So I was like going, wow. And then I heard him say, you have to understand, I only read headlines. I love a lot of people. I'm very positive about who I am, but I cannot keep on top of all of the topical issues in all of the various groups that are connected to me, or I'm connected to, or I'm not connected to, but need to be paid attention to. I just can't do it. There's nobody can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do the best I can. And, I don't support anything that's anti, but I do understand that people feel sensitive about this. And then my thinking took over, and I'm thinking about it going, he's right. Part of the issues was siloing everything. And the core issue that we're addressing with resilient communities, in case you guys haven't figured out, we do have an agenda and we do have a core issue here. The core issue we're dealing with is we need to shift our thinking and get everybody out of the damn silos and embracing their humanity, because silos are dangerous things for isolating people. The fact that this is an LGBTQ plus issue is because they're in a silo and not considered human. You with me?
I'm trying to be. I don't
Yeah.
know who doesn't consider him human, but
Well, when you silo somebody, then they're that. It's easier to make them not human if you've got them in
don't
a
they do
silo.
that to themselves? Just
Well,
like the black community
well,
does that to themselves,
funny
just like
thing,
the Hispanic community does it to
when our
themselves.
whole culture is about siloing, we embrace the silo to have our own identity, but it also, we are put in a silo to have our own identity. But that identity is not us as human beings. That identity restricts what we can do, what we can say, and makes us a target at the same time.
I'm trying to follow you, but it
Think,
I don't.
ask questions, think it through. Let's discuss this.
Yeah, I'm trying to ask questions. So when I look at the LGBT community and their advocation, right? They are advocating on behalf of that community and what
Correct.
it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the humanity. See behind that, right? See behind
Mm-hmm.
my blackness. See behind my LGBT. But see me, right? That part doesn't seem to come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is accept the silo, right? This is the silo. This is what it is. You need to accept this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what are you saying or what are you suggesting that people do? Because people haven't been seeing the silo, right? That's why the silo exists in the first place. But then to say, okay, not only maybe there's a time and place for the silo, and then there's also a time and place for just, hey, I'm Marwan the individual. Where are you at with this?
Okay, the time and place for the silo is to give you power to change things. Has that
Mm-hmm.
worked so far? Has it worked for the black community?
Oh, I think it's worked great for the LGBT community.
To some degree,
I think it's worked wonderfully, especially if you compare it to the black community.
right? So why hasn't it worked for the black community, and why has it worked for the LGBTQ community?
I think there are some very racial pieces to that, right? And there are very powerful people and wealthy folks, and often that are white, that are in the LGBT community, and they are able to do more, right? Um, Blackness in America is always going to be this. It's not even a third rail, right? There are folks that say, "Oh yeah, you're post-racial." I was just talking about this, right? On the
Mm-hmm.
advent of ML King's holiday and whatnot, but how is it that even though we're getting younger, we're still watching this indoctrination of racism and bias that is still coming up and it's getting younger? We thought that,
Mm-hmm.
oh, when the old, racists die off, when grandma and grandpa die off, everything will be fine. And that's not what we're seeing,
No,
right?
because they're being indoctrinated and put into silos as well.
So we're
So
seeing
it's
it in elementary school
mhm.
in examples of I just deplorable things. I won't go into it.
So
But what,
would you
what
say
it
that
goes to show is that those things aren't changing, right?
right?
However, the LGBT movement, right, that has uh, gone leaps and bounds, right? We could look at our city
Because
council, right?
the issues are slightly simpler in some ways. And there's a lot of people that will attack me for that. But let me ask a couple
Yeah,
questions.
that's interesting. Go ahead.
Okay, so first question is okay. I'm going to go back and address that, and then I'm going to ask something,
Mhm.
ask some questions of you. The LGBTQ community is simpler in some ways because it's mostly legislative as opposed to a cultural shift. They want to make sure that they do not get persecuted, and they want to take some of the blue laws off the books, which, by the way, hasn't been happening anywhere near as fast as they would like. Um,
Blue laws. What are blue laws for
Blue
those who
laws are like sodomy laws. A lot of states have sodomy laws, which means they can actually haul you into prison because you have had sex with another male. There are hundreds of those on the books all across the country, even in places you would be surprised. to see them. Those are blue laws, laws that allow the police into your bedroom to see how you perform or what you're doing and how that violates the law.
Why
Okay,
do they
that
call them blue laws?
I have no idea. That's just what they're called.
Okay, all right.
So the other thing is that they have laws to protect them legally to allow them to have equal representation, be able to be married like everybody else, and to acknowledge that they are equally human in a lot of ways. So that's a very clear message. I would argue that within the Black community, that the message is nowhere near as clear, nor as concise, and or agreed upon by everybody. But that aside, when you think of the LGBT community, what's the first thing that pops into your mind about the people involved? White males, right?
No.
No. What does appear in your mind?
You know what? That's a good question. I don't know. I just think of the spectrum, right? It's
Right.
just to me, it's all of it as a bucket, if you will.
So even within the LGBTQ plus community, there is significant disagreement and bias and no disagreement and bias. Trans people are now being accepted, and that's why the fight is so hard for them. Even within what would be considered the LGBTQ plus community, trans people are treated more poorly than a lot of the other people. And I will tell you from historical points of view, because I've been involved in the LGBTQ community since I
And
was a
I'm aware of that.
teenager,
Yes, I'm aware of that.
that the white males have treated the lesbian females poorly for a very long time, and there is absolutely a glass ceiling within that community for representation.
Okay, I have to take your word for it.
But yeah, it's interesting how that has been historically the case. I don't think it's as much the case now, and it's not as much the case everywhere.
So let me tell you my perspective as a heterosexual black male on that, right?
Okay.
So what I see is you have LGBTQI
Hmm.
plus, et cetera, right? And because this country is still what 60-55% white, right? It's white. So regardless of how you identify, whether you're LGBT or etc., right? You're still white. So if there are issues within the LGBT community, it's still they're fighting up here, right?
Hmm.
So if you have the patriarchy is bad, but you have a trans man who has transitioned into a woman, is still a white woman, right?
Unless it's a black man to a black
No,
woman,
no, no.
or a
What I'm
white,
saying, but
yeah,
but even in there, there's you're talking about it just from uh
perspective
trans
or perception.
from no. You're talking about it from trans having issues with L and G, right?
Hmm.
So we didn't even get into the racial in that. I'm just talking about what I see and what I experience,
So
right?
I'm just saying that there's dysfunction and bias
But let me
and
finish my
prejudice
thought.
there. Go
Let me
ahead.
finish my thought.
Absolutely.
So what I'm experiencing, what I see is you have LGBT up here. It's like city council, right? They were very proud that they are a LGBT majority court, right now,
Hmm.
right, or council, and that's fantastic. But everyone looks white. Everyone is
Hmm.
white, right, or white presenting. So nothing has changed here. This is they're advocating and jockeying for position here, right? And it's just like the civil rights era where you had was supposed to be for um, ways to make reparations or recompense to the black community, but we know through Title IX and some other things that white women actually were the ones that majorly benefited from the civil rights era, right? So there again, black folks are still here and still struggling. So when you ask the question, how are black folks still suffering here and the LGBT is a lot easier, the simple answer is race. And we
And I
have
will,
not
and
written.
I'll give you one more simple answer:
Mhm.
money.
No, there's not a money issue in this country. And I think every American should refuse to believe that at this point, when we were able to offload billions to Ukraine and billions to Israel.
And
Uh,
but there is a inequality of wealth issue. And actually, the funny thing is, I just put up
and it's not because of lack of money. We have the
yeah,
money.
Well, yeah, we can always print more, right?
No, we don't have to print more, right? When we fight for reparations, we're told we need to have a committee for the committee to see if we should even talk about it. And then it's, well, who's going to get it? And are they actually going to spend it right? Or are they going to waste the money or this and that? We don't ask any of those questions when we offload billions of dollars to other countries.
Yeah. And there's a lot of argument one way or the other, but that's politics. But
But what I'm saying is, then you're inaccurate to say that it's a money issue when there's
but it
billions of
is.
dollars that all of a sudden miraculously appeared, right? And it was like, oh, here you go.
Okay, so let's change that word from money to status.
Go ahead, change it.
Okay, so you were saying that civil rights movement benefited white women more than anybody else, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you say white women had better status than black people did?
Hell yes.
Okay, so in the gay community, the LGBTQ community, and you'll see how I circled back to this, the white homosexual male has more gravitas than trans people who generally don't have a lot of money because of their psychological social status. Gay women who do not have a lot of money, because predominantly if you're a paired up white male, you become a dual income, no children, and you have a lot more financial status and gravitas than other people in your own in your so-called group.
Whether you're single or whether you're married in a heterosexual or an LGBT relationship, you still have more wealth than any when you're talking about when you're comparing it to the black community, right? So again, you're making my point. They're jockeying for space up here while we're still down there.
I think
let me go. I think that
we're agreeing. I think we're agreeing.
Hold on.
So
Let me go a little further. Let's go back to slavery, right? So when white women couldn't vote, they still had slaves, right? They were gifted slaves. I did a podcast on this and went down a lot of history because I had to respond to one of the council people about some really bad statements that she had made in a meeting, right? So that was still happening. You also had the rape of men and women, of slaves, right? Black men and black women, by white men and white women. And they were both raping both the opposite sex and the same sex, which would make them LGBT, right? So it doesn't matter, even from back then, where you identified, right? We're here. And that has never been solved. That is the thing that we don't talk about, and that's the problem why we're still here in 2024.
But now let's go back to the silos. Sure. Part of that is because we have silos that keep us identified within this group, and we're not talking about it across the board where we can actually cure it.
Well, here's the thing. Why would you, right? Because if you're the one with power, it becomes a zero-sum game for you, right? Because that means you're going to have to relinquish your power and your privilege.
So let's go back to the article I was going to mention earlier that I just put up. The Guardian just posted an article about the Davos meeting in Switzerland. And a group of, I think, almost 2,500 billionaires and millionaires signed a letter saying, please tax us. The inequality is destroying democracy, and we need to be taxed, and the money has to be used for improving the infrastructure to help create equality, to help build us back to a stronger, united people.
Is this the United States? 2,500?
This is 2,500 people across the world, and they're talking to everybody saying, tax us. Please tax us.
Why do they need to be taxed?
Because they understand, well, okay, I guess they could give the money away, but in taxes...
That's my point. You don't need to be taxed. If you know there's an issue, then give the money.
But the theory is the government will be able to use the money more wisely than just giving it away.
Have we seen the government using the money wisely? They would be better off saying, hey, you know what? We're going to come together. We're going to tax ourselves.
So
and we're going to fix the issues that we see there, whether it's infrastructure or whatever. And
I
then
agree.
force the local government or federal government to funds match, right?
Yep.
And they push them. But what do? They lobby for more money, right? It's very bizarre. Go ahead.
No, but swinging back to intentional evolution, one of the reasons that happens is because people aren't united in calling them out on it. Because we're back in silos. We're so busy with our silos and separating from each other that we don't actually talk about the human things we all need to talk about, like why is government spending billions of dollars going here and here and here, and what's the benefit to us about that? Now, we can argue about that back and forth. We can talk about that, but we don't have a lot of time on this channel to do that. Matter of fact, we're almost out of time.
Well, and I think it's almost a lost conversation anyway. We got 20 minutes, but I think it's a lost conversation just because your issue is important to you, just as my issue is important to me, and my issue is probably going to be more important to me than yours is to you, right? So wherever the money's going to, whoever's receiving that is like, hey, man, I need this, I deserve this, or whatever they're thinking or feeling. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what's behind that.
Yeah, but in the long run, again, let's go back to the reason that resilient ecosystems exists is because a lot of people are dealing with the immediate, and I would say that what you're talking about, pretty much the show, is the immediate. Mm-hmm. It's an immediate that has not been addressed. It has not been addressed well, and one of the reasons they haven't been addressed well is because we haven't gotten ourselves to the human space where we need to be to address it well, and it's fallen into the hands of the political and the social, and we need to get it out of that. And again, we need to make the decision to do that. We need to consciously make that decision and do the work. Much like going back to the fluffy video I talked about where it kind of in my face, I had to start thinking about it. I had to start thinking about, yeah, those things are all important to each of those groups, the everything there. But what one person can address all of that. But if you're at the table and we're all addressing it together, we can address it. It isn't a political thing. It then isn't a media thing. It's a thing where we are treating each other as human beings and we're starting to solve the problems. And once we start solving some of the problems, we'll realize that they're linked to all of the other problems, and we can start solving a whole bunch of things all at once.
All right, so let me give you a scenario, and I kind of feel like at the end of this, you're going to say, well, I'm not the one to solve it. I'm just the one to bring people together, right?
Well, so, I am one of the people to solve it. So because I have a piece.
So you got a peace pipe. So, there are people that feel different ways about immigration and the challenges and the issues, right? And what we're seeing in Chicago or New York is very offensive, especially to low-income Black communities and BIPOC communities and low-income white communities that live there also, but primarily Black communities, which we're watching being flooded by immigrants coming in, being shipped through Texas into these neighborhoods, right? And now the reports are coming out. One, not only are they spending millions and billions, but these folks are being put up into hotels, and all of these concessions are being made, which is making it even harder for the poor Blacks to access the resources that they already weren't getting enough of. And it's like all of a sudden there's this political will to make it happen for these folks that have come across the border, but to hell with the people that were already living here, right? Mm-hmm. And what you get from the right is, well, you know what? They live in America, and if they just work hard and pull themselves up from the bootstraps, they would be doing better, right? And then what we get from the left is, well, you know what? These folks are coming in and they're seeking asylum or whatever the case may be, and so we've got to take care of these people, right? But in the middle is you have American citizens that are getting shit on, right? That have been evicted out of their homes. They can't eat. They can't make a living. They can't take care of their families. They're suffering the same cold, right? What do you hear? Oh, in the news, immigrants are suffering these horrible weather temperatures in Chicago and in New York. And by no means should any human being be outside, right? Mm-hmm. But we haven't heard any of that the years before immigrants were being bused in Chicago and New York. But Black people, Black males, who are by far the most homeless in this country, suffer in silence year after year, year after year. That's the problem, right? So what is the solution to that?
Okay, first of all, that will be the case either, but the first question I ask is, who owns the media?
I don't even know where you're going with it, but whoever owns the media,
because you're talking about what gets,
Democrat owns the medium, the media.
I'm saying corporations own the media, and what do corporations benefit by making sure that we all stay in our place? they get profits.
What do you mean by all stay in their place?
Okay, so we have people here who are being shit on, and we have people, and that's been true forever, but it's actually accelerating. And this is a lot of what I talk about, a lot of what I write about, a lot of what what is the core of this is going to continue as long as we do not regulate capitalism. We do not have the jobs we had 10 years ago. We do not have the jobs we had 20 years ago. The job pools are shrinking. The ability for people to have money to do anything is shrinking. Costs of everything are going up. This is a given. It's a known, but we never hear about it. Not once, not ever. Maybe in memes sometimes, but nobody talks about it. We have thousands of nonprofits trying to deal with things with no resources. We have cities who have fewer and fewer resources trying to deal with an increasing homeless presence that is going to continue to increase because the costs of living are going up and up and up, and nobody's talking about it, nobody's reporting it. So why is it not being reported? Because corporations own the media.
So you think it's
So
just a media issue?
no, I think it's a huge issue. Well, do you think I think it's a media issue?
Well,
One of the
that's what
reasons
you
we're
brought up.
doing the intention, well, I did because it's a piece of the puzzle. There are a lot of bad puzzle pieces that have to be addressed that will never fit with anything in our humanity. But we can only address that together, which means we have to learn how to talk to each other. And that in itself will be steps towards solving much of the other problems. And I know that's a light answer, but we don't have a lot of time to go into a lot of depth. And each one of these takes hours of conversation to actually get to the place where people understand. We focus on the long term change because someone has to stop the bleeding, which is what G2 does. It's what God's Unbroken Home does. It's what a lot of people do. They focus on stopping the bleeding or trying to stop the bleeding, but they don't have bandages. You know, you're watching people die in the streets and there's nothing you can do about it. There are thousands of nonprofits doing this every day, but it's all being caused by a cultural cancer that we have to start working on. Otherwise, it will never get better. And
I'm
that's
a,
what our focus is.
Let me put this in the chat here.
Okay.
And what I'm putting in here is we have about somewhere between 500 and 700,000 homeless in this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were to take 200,000 and build each one of them a home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assuming we're not even assuming that some of these folks are families, right? So the number would be less. That's $140 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at just Ukraine and Israel, just in the last 2 years, how long has the Ukraine war been going on? Is that
Well,
2 years?
why don't we just step out and say, why don't we look at any of the corporate bailouts?
Because that's what I'm focused on. You're focused
Yeah.
on corporate bailouts. I'm focused on
I'm just saying, what I'm
war.
saying is it could be any number of the things that we've
And
dumped
we
an
we could
enormous
take
amount of money on.
we could take a few percentage points from the defense budget, right?
Yeah.
It could come from anywhere. We could take a little bit from. You know what? I love your point, right? So we could still help out Ukraine and Israel, right? But we could pull a little bit from the defense budget. We could pull back a little bit on Ukraine. We could pull back on some of the government bailouts for corporations, right? Everyone has a $200,000 home. We have
Mm-hmm.
all of this land in middle America. We have all these jobs. I watched a politician the other day talk about the reason that immigration is the way that it is and why they want the people in here. And it was like one of the most racist things I've heard is, well, who's going to pick our fruit and our vegetables? Like literally just said this on live camera. Like, no,
Okay,
that's the reason why we have
I'm gonna sidestep here for a moment, and I'm gonna go back to Fluffy for just a minute.
Go ahead.
He was up for before COVID. He was up for being the host of the Academy Awards because Kevin Hart walked away from it and nobody else wanted it, and they asked him to write the jokes he would
Oh,
have.
why
So
did Kevin Hart walk away from it?
um, I don't remember the reason, but it
They
was a
tried to
very
cancel him the year before, and someone else had to host, and then they wanted to come back and uncancel him. And he's like,
well,
"Yeah, I'm
yeah,
good."
and I think that's what that was it. But my thing was the Fluffy response. He said, "Okay, I'll put the jokes together so we know what the vibe is." And his first joke is, as he goes up there, is, "Yep, I'm another Mexican that is taking a job nobody else wants." your statement about the pickers. I was just making a response to that.
What's the punchline? I
The
didn't get
punchline
it.
is, did he go? His opening joke at the Oscars is, "Yep, just another Mexican taking a job nobody else wants because everybody else turned down the Oscars."
Oh, I get it. I get it. Okay. Where's my Trump on my boom boom? There we go.
Yeah. So that is racist as hell what you said, and it's true. We have the fruit the agriculture industry would take a tremendous hit without immigrants picking fruit and vegetables. It's just a financial fact. If that's right or wrong, the
Well,
old
you take a hit. You know what I'm saying? But you don't get to recreate modern day slavery because Americans can't live off of picking the fruits and vegetables, right?
that
Because
wasn't
it's too.
Marwan. That wasn't a statement or a judgment on my part. That was just kind of like saying about what
Oh,
he's talking about.
you got me riled up now.
Yeah, no. What I was going to say is that to change the politics behind it, to get the $200,000 homes, to get the and all of the support structures. I do not want to belittle that we have to have
Yes,
far more mental health
mental
capabilities,
health. Yeah,
far more medical capabilities than we have today to deal with that. So it's not just the $200,000 home. How about an $80,000 home someplace, and $120,000 worth of support services to go along with it to support that. But to get there, we have to have the will, and we don't have the will, which is why politically it has been unfeasible for politicians to advocate for it or do anything about it, because we haven't come out and said, if you want to sit in that seat, we're going to have to do this, because otherwise you won't be in that seat anymore.
well,
And
here's the
that,
thing.
well, here the thing is, we have to work together to create the political will, which means we have to have the discussions, and that's long-term work. It isn't a light switch. No real change ever happened with a light switch.
But it's hard to say, hey, you know what, I'll advocate for that when my family has struggled and suffered, and now we're just gonna give folks $200,000 homes. And I'm not necessarily saying that they should just be
I
gifted
don't
these
think
homes
I
without a
I don't
requirement
and I don't
for
think
these
that
homes.
yeah, I don't think that that is a solution that most people would adopt or wrap their heads around. But I think, and it is my absolute belief, that if we get enough people in the room having conversations, we'll come up with an answer that no one thought of before, that is viable, that we can push, because we will be hearing from people who are involved in it on either end. We will be hearing from people who hear about it, and we'll be having those conversations, and we can come to a consensus about how to address it.
I don't know about consensus, maybe a simple majority.
Either way, it can move forward.
I
As
think
long
there's
as everybody can agree to work together on it, even if it's a simple majority, that's consensus.
Yeah, I just want to just because people will take that in a different way, right?
Right.
Consensus is like everyone agrees, so let's go. I think the meritocracy conversation, and even without that, because people do demonize that,
Yep.
and there should be something for hard work and paying your bills on time that should be rewarded, right?
Right.
So I'm not one of those people that are like, you know what, hey, good, you should have did it, but you know what, we're doing this because they weren't able to for whatever reason, so let's pull them up.
Let's pull it
That's
together and make
not
it
what I'm
happen.
saying at all,
So,
right?
and then there's one other very important question that I actually asked on the webpage as I was writing it,
Mhm.
or I actually made a comment on. Yeah, they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, as if anybody knows what a bootstrap is anymore.
Well, but that's I'm giving you a trombone for that.
So, couple things. I don't think we
But
can
it
really
is
do.
antiquated. We should come up with something more up to date. I do agree with you for that.
Yeah, because I know what they are. Because I was raised around horses, but most people don't even know what a bootstrap is, and I hear people repeating that, and I look at them and go, "Do you even?" Never mind. Just never mind. Um,
Well, but hey, you know what? That's emblematic of the example, right? You were raised around horses. Some
mhm.
people are poor that are raised around horses, but most people that's not that would be a luxury item that they wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
take care of. So they would know what a bootstrap is, right? I mean,
Right.
it is actually it does still fit.
Yeah, it does. You just have to have the experience to know that, which is true in most things. So we're running up on the 5 minutes, and I do want to talk about something slightly different that we didn't get as far as I wanted to get today, but we got to see Marwan riled up. So
Hey, this
there
is
we
your
are.
fault, man.
It's always worth it. Um, but I do want to talk about this because Marwan has just experienced this on the Conduit. I'm experienced and Gather Together, Grow Together. I experienced it on our pages. There are people out today doing fishing expeditions to get you hooked out. One of the ones that I've been getting is your page is going to be permanently deleted unless you
Oh,
blah blah blah. And
you
then you
got
go
that
to
too.
and then you go to the link and you laugh your ass off because the guy's fishing for your personal information
Hmm.
or whoever it is. This is going out. It's hit everybody that I know.
Yes.
And there's no way to report it to Facebook the way they're coming in.
Hmm.
Um, you're going to see more fishing expeditions. This is one. You're going to see a whole bunch more because this is an election year.
Un-
They're going to have hackers, bots, and everybody trying to get your personal information to influence the election, to take over your computer, send Trojans to get over your. Don't open strange emails. Don't click on weird links because they're set to take over your computers to influence people. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, I don't have time now to go into it. Read security pieces. And if you really want to scare the hell out of yourself, go online and look at cyber attacks that are going on. They have cyber maps that are live action. You'll see millions of attacks from dozens of different countries every minute of every day. So just try and be smart. Don't click on weird links. Ask yourself questions before you open a link and double check the sense of it. And they're getting very clever about it. Be careful, folks. It is an election year and it is going to be awful on social media. So be careful.
Here's one of the things. If you have not tried to log into something and you're getting, because I get this all the time from Microsoft, we need to authenticate your account before we'll let you in, right? And this comes all through the day. And so I'll call the people at the office and they'll say, "Are you trying to get into the Microsoft account?" And they're like, "No." And you don't have to be in a hurry. Just because you get an email, just because you get a phone call or a
Take a
text, you
breath.
don't have to respond. Go to the actual website or give them a call at the actual website number and say, "Hey, is this what's happening?" And oftentimes they'll tell you no, but don't.
Mhm.
They're depending upon your panic.
Yeah,
So don't
they
panic.
want they want to get you hooked. So just take a breath. Election years are the worst. Um, they are the time when everybody's trying to get into your systems and or get into your head to tell you all kinds of things that you don't need to know. And part of wanting to bring people together is that so we can sanity check each other.
Change your passwords,
Hmm.
right? Things that are your names or your kids' names. You need to have some variance because they have things that will go in there. If you're doing third party emails, right? You downloaded an app or a hospital app, right? You're using MyChart. Those get hacked all the time. And then you get that letter in the mail saying, "Hey, we had to let you know you got hacked." But that's the same password that you use for your bank. You've got a problem. I know it's
Yeah,
painful. Create a sheet, lock it up in your safe, put it away. Just keep yourself safe.
yeah.
All right,
Don't write it on your hand. Okay.
give the final word. We've got Kitsap Housing and Homeless Coalition in 2 minutes.
Okay. Final word is we can evolve to a better culture, but we have to do it together, and we have to learn some tools to do it.
All right, this was a fiery episode. As always, I appreciate the conversation with you, and the fact that you are brave enough to have it in a space online, knowing that we can be judged or canceled at any time for giving our raw thoughts. Right? This isn't a thought out statement. We're just saying what we think and what we feel off the cuff, and so I will always appreciate you for that. Right now at 2 p.m., 2 minutes. Oh no, it's 2 p.m. The Kitsap Housing and Homeless Coalition. Please join us over there. For Mark
Peace
Bart
out.
Ray Frost, I'm Marwan Cameron. This Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces, the conduit. We'll see you next time. Bye bye, everybody.